chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with the fabulous Becky McNattin. We are glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I've really been looking forward to this show because we're, of course, always focused on mental wellness. But today we're going to highlight the experiences of parenting and how this can impact mental health for kids and their caregivers, Tara. And being a parent, I've said this so many times, is a challenging role, and it is the most intense of every feel we can have.
For sure.
I know you would agree with that.
Yes.
And sometimes us parents, me included, don't have the tools ourselves to navigate the moments as they come up. And so I want to break this down throughout our show today and explore one option. There's many, but one option for promoting healthy self-awareness for caregivers. And to do this, we've invited our guest, Annie Hoff, to the show to help us all understand the concept of conscious discipline, everyone. And now, this might be a term that some of you listeners have heard of. Awesome if you have. But if you haven't, you most certainly are not alone. I myself don't know much about conscious discipline, so I'm learning right alongside you all today. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We are really glad to have you here. So tell us about you.
So I'm Annie Hoff. I'm a mental health therapist. I worked as a school social worker for a long time. I'm a registered play therapist and a certified conscious discipline instructor.
So a certified conscious discipline
She's
instructor.
big time, folks.
Yeah, very important. What is conscious discipline?
So Dr. Bailey, the author of Conscious Discipline, would tell you it is the answer to the world's problems. But basically what it is...
So let's get going.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
I know. Yeah, I kind of believe her. I do. So it basically is a model that helps humans become aware and then conscious of our own behaviors that kind of keep us in the weeds. And so, as it relates to parenting or teaching or any situation, and then it offers us tools to be able to bring ourselves back. So we always talk about, like, when I'm in the weeds, that awareness of, oops, there I go again. I'm in the weeds again. And how do I bring myself back so that I can focus on whether it's attuning to what my child needs, whether it's regulating myself so then I can choose what I want to do in this moment. And there's something super empowering about that when you can catch yourself versus, living in your unconscious.
And I think that is one thing I love about conscious discipline is that is the key that so many people are not aware of when they're parenting or teaching or working with kids is how often are we really looking at ourselves and our regulation and the skills that we possess in order to deal with the kiddos in an effective manner. And that is what I love about conscious discipline is that we are looking at ourselves and looking inward. Absolutely.
And with that, another big layer of this is becoming aware of what are some of these mental models which really are protective that were modeled for us. What were some of these models that live in our unconscious, and then that kind of gives us a template of this is the way the world should be. This is the way kids should behave. This is the way people should behave. And so sometimes those models no longer serve us as adults.
Right.
So I always talk about I'm a people pleaser in recovery. So I learned at a very young age to be a good girl and listen.
Yeah.
But as a grown-up, I've learned the importance of being assertive and not always just going with what everyone wants me to do is really going to serve me. And so that, to me, again, is when I talk about the power behind conscious discipline, it's about you. We always say, it starts with me. I'm the safekeeper. And if I can shift how I show up in the moment, then I can help others. And kids are always watching us.
And we might be able to model something different.
Correct.
For them, which is in part what you're saying, recognizing, and Tara and I have talked on the show a lot about self-awareness, recognizing what role we have in a moment, but understanding that we are also, for any children, probably way beyond caregivers, we're modeling things.
Always.
And kids are perceiving and receiving those messages. Well, such an interesting topic here. Right now, we are going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through conscious discipline a lot more, everybody. Caregiving and creating a foundation for children's mental wellness. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We will be back in just a moment.
Trying to find what you lost. You can't go it alone.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Tara Martini, along with Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on conscious discipline.
Annie, I would love to know what brought you to the area of conscious discipline, and you mentioned might solve the world's issues. What makes you passionate about it?
Yeah. So I started my career working with adults in community mental health centers, and I became really kind of took a deep dive into the world of DBT therapy and working with adults with borderline personality disorder, which is a real cognitive, changing your thoughts to help you change your behavior. And so I did that for a long time, and I found that many of my clients had experienced early trauma when they were young. And so I became curious about just learning more about trauma and about the brain, and decided to shift my career and start working with kids in the school setting as a school social worker. And so when I started to work with my kindergartners that were throwing chairs and running out of the classroom, and I would try to use my cognitive behavior strategies, like, why did you throw the chair? And they would say, I don't know, or they'd tell you, what they think they should say.
Right.
And so I really felt like I needed more tools. So I went to, I wanted to become trained in play therapy. So I went to a play therapy institute, and one of the classes I took, I read a book called I Love Your Rituals, which is a book by Dr. Bailey.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes sense. So from there, I kind of looked her up and everything, and I lived in Kansas City at the time, and they were doing a 2-day training on conscious discipline, and it was Dr. Bailey and Jill Moley, who's one of the instructors, and I can't even explain. I went to this 2-day, and I sat next to this woman who happened to be a certified instructor, and the whole time I'm like, I want to do that. I want this. Like something shook within me where I was like, this is
Just resonated with you so much.
Like, you can tell now, even just when you talk about it, you're just
She's lighting up everyone.
Yeah.
And I was a new mom. Like, I had a 2-year-old at the time, and I hadn't been. I think I might have been pregnant with my son, and so I wanted to learn a new way, and so I started writing grants and going to every conscious discipline training I could get, and then eventually I became certified. It took me, I just taught this for a long time, and then I became certified in about 2015.
Okay.
It became your thing.
Became my thing.
In your words, or maybe you could use Dr. Bailey's, what is the goal of conscious discipline?
World peace is what she would say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like to have conscious adults.
Man, we need that.
Yeah. I mean, that is her ultimate goal. And she talks a lot about just the power of unity, and that, like, as we lean into, like, really seeing each other through the lens of we are in this together, and if we can create safety first, safety in relationship, if we can offer opportunities to co-regulate each other, attune to each other, create, whether it's a school, a classroom, an organization, a family that's grounded in safety and connection, then we can, learn the skills we need to solve problems and to lean into conflict. So there's this, adult self-regulation piece, but at the end of it, it's conflict. Like, how do you lean into those moments and repair relationships and problem solve?
Wow. Yeah. So if people are wondering if it's world peace is the goal,
Just a little tiny goal.
tiny goal.
Yeah.
I think you also mentioned self-awareness. It's a way of drawing ourselves back to the moment. You mentioned going into the weeds. Perhaps one goal, maybe a smaller goal than world peace, would be to bring you back to the moment of being aware of you and what's going on with you. So how would you say it works? If our listeners are like, well, how does conscious discipline work?
Yeah, I got what you're saying. So what a small goal is to notice. So being aware. That awareness, we call it noticing. So mindfulness in action is another way of thinking about that. The way it works is we have these 7 powers of conscious adults. And so the 7 powers of conscious adults are basically meant to empower us. So if we lean into these powers, for example, the power of perception. If I lean into the power of perception, which tells me that I can choose my perception if I'm aware of it. If I'm aware that, and that depending on my perception is going to dictate what part of my brain is getting activated. So if I'm seeing the world through the lower centers of my brain, it's through sort of a lens of protection, or it could be through a lens of judgment, versus in my executive state, I can see the world through a lens of choice. I can choose how I see things. And if I can choose my perception, I can then compose myself. So an example might be, instead of seeing So I always tell the story that when my daughter Chloe was like 6 years old, she, I think she wanted me to buy her Lululemon leggings or something ridiculous like that. And I wasn't going to spend $100 on leggings. And so I remember, so I said, no, I'm not buying those for you. And she's like, you need to take parenting classes, not teach them. Right. So if I would have said that to my parents, I would have been, probably my face would have been smacked and I would have been punished. But what Chloe was saying to me in a really inappropriate way was, I'm mad at you, Mom. I'm mad. You set a boundary and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And so I have this amazing opportunity as a parent. If I shift my perception and instead of seeing her as disrespectful or disobedient, really what she's saying is, I'm mad and I don't know how to express this in a way that's appropriate. So I could have said, I probably didn't, but I could have said, wow, you're wanting me to know you're angry. But then I would have said, you know what, Chloe, I don't like it when you tell me that I need to take parenting classes. That's hurtful. So this isn't a permissive parenting. Just so we often get the bad rap that it's permissive. It's just different. It's leaning into these moments that our unconscious might say, nope, that's disrespectful, shut it down. And seeing it as, actually, this is a missing skill and it's an opportunity.
Right. Well, and Tara and I have talked on the show a lot about how validation does not equal agreement. And what I hear you saying is we can validate and also help point out to children what an emotion might be. What are we hearing? And offer some validation to that. It doesn't mean we agree with the behavior.
Absolutely.
Or agree with the way that it's been stated. And so those often get intertwined. Until I can agree with you, I can't validate you.
Right. But yes, you can.
But we can. It does take a sense of awareness of ourselves and maybe staying regulated ourselves, because people can confront us with something that causes a feel in us too.
Yes.
But I love that example so much, and maybe even seeing how this could be a pattern in ourselves or in the way that we show up to relationships, specifically in our parenting.
Yeah.
And
you go.
I was just going to say that for me, as you're speaking, to me, this whole model could be so transformative for so many facets of life. I think one piece that's missing so much is, wow, like students who are going through an education program as they're learning to be a teacher. I can tell you I took 0 classes on something like this, where it was learning for me to be perceptive and, you know, looking at myself and how I can regulate and then what skills I can bring forward to then how I'm going to interact with my students. Imagine if we all carried that model with us into our classrooms for the first time or into any environment while we're working with kids, how that would really transform the classroom and how you interact, and then what then the students are producing and how they're feeling and how then they feel safe in that environment.
And then they offer it to each other. Like,
exactly.
You create this culture. That's the other piece of this, is the culture that you then create is this culture of helplessness or helpfulness, not helplessness. Helpfulness and regulated adults. And so regulated kids, regulated adults. It's really, you know, how many times are we being asked, like, how do I regulate my kid? How do I help them learn? They don't know how to self-regulate. Well, it starts with us. It starts with us being able to regulate ourselves. And we do that through what's our perception. So if I can see, back to the Chloe story, if I can see her behavior as communicating, I don't have a skill, I'm going to be way more able to regulate myself if I can see it that way versus, you know, feeling dysregulated and seeing her as a little rat. That
Right. Well, then you're leading with compassion and that curiosity piece we talk about rather than that judgment where when you say, a parent comes to you and says, how do I deal with my child? My first question will be, well, do you know how to regulate yourself, you know, in that situation? And I bet a lot of them are like, oh, I've never thought about that before.
Right. And the other beautiful little, like Dr. Bailey has all these little nuggets that are just helpful to remember. And one of my favorite, and that I always tell teachers and parents, is what you offer to others, you strengthen in yourself. So every single time I show up composed when a child is dysregulated, I'm giving their brain a different experience, but I'm also giving myself, like, that regulation, like, reminder, and that neuroplasticity that happens the more you do that. And so when they talk about the powers, that's really how they empower us, because the more you practice that, your brain changes and you become more able to bring yourself back, regulate
Hugely
yourself.
reparative for ourselves. Conscious discipline says that the biggest threat to a child's safety is an out-of-control adult. And the key to safety is a conscious, mindful adult. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. So back to the idea of like if I see a behavior as that's disrespectful, that's, bad, that's inappropriate, I am going to automatically react from the lower centers of my brain. And so as an out of control adult, I'm screaming and punishing you. If I'm punishing you for bad behavior, it is really my own dysregulation that's being projected onto you, and I am not able to see what is the call for help, because we know all behavior is communication. And so the only way that I can be helpful is if I'm able to regulate myself so that I can see what is this child, this other adult, this parent, this husband needing in this moment.
Sure.
That's the other thing I talk a lot about my
Completely
marriage,
see that.
like how helpful it is to, lean into those moments of conflict again in a different way.
Yeah, well, I can see how, although the intention of the show is to talk about caregiving and parenting, that this would probably change the way someone shows up in their relationships.
Absolutely.
When we talk about, and you've mentioned the 7 powers of conscious adults a couple of times. I want to get to those because they are the foundation of conscious discipline, and I'm going to list them, but then I want to ask you about each of them.
Got it.
So there's 7 powers, everyone. The power of perception, the power of free will, the power of unity, power of attention, power of acceptance, power of love, power of intention. These might be a list of my favorite words.
Yep.
I think Taryn agrees with that too. So, wow.
Yeah.
And the assumption is every adult has these powers. Maybe every human
Within
has these
them,
powers.
yes.
But first one there, power of perception. Tell us about this one.
So the power of perception basically tells us that no one can make you angry without your permission. So if I
So strong.
if I am aware of my perception, and I can then choose what's helpful. I can choose how I see something. However, if I am, we use the word triggered in conscious discipline, but activated I think is helpful. If I am activated, I am going to see things from the lower centers. My perception is going to be either threat or nope, it's triggering my insecurity. This shouldn't be like this. That's not okay. But from my executive state, I can see the call for help. And that's really and so if I lean into that power, choose my perception, then I can access my skill of composure. So what's important about the powers and the skills is we have these 7 skills that are basically a mirror of the power. But in order to access the skill, you really need to lean into the power. So I could put
Makes
them all
total
together,
sense.
all 7, if that's helpful, of like how they all kind of fit together. Would that be helpful?
Let's do it after we talk about all 7.
Okay, perfect.
The second one is the power of free will.
Yeah. So the power of free will tells us the only person you can make change is you. So if you've ever tried to get a smoker to stop smoking or a drinker you can't. At the end of the day, you have to be the one to choose. And so we kind of talk about this analogy of the invisible beach ball that we all carry. That's our personal power, personal responsibility, our emotions. And when I take back my beach ball, I then get to choose. What am I going to do next? How am I? And so with children, when children come to us and say, I hate you, you need to take parenting classes, they're throwing their beach ball at us. And what we're doing is we are giving them back their beach ball and maybe offering them choices so that they can choose what to do next. But we first have to regulate ours. That's what free will is.
Well, and it goes back to then the first one of perception, that the permission of, you can't make yourself angry without.
Yeah.
So third one is the power of unity.
Yeah, so that's that belief
Beautiful
that we're all
word.
in this together. Yeah. And if I can lean into this idea that we are all in this together, that I can then trust that I'm not alone in this, and then I can lean into the skill of encouragement and encourage myself and others.
Yeah, and I think a helpful way to note that for our listeners is the word this. It could be this moment.
Yeah.
It could be a capital T this of life and all of its things, but we are in this together. If you are in an interaction, we are in this
Yes.
situation and the circumstance together, not necessarily adversarial.
Right.
Which is what I hear from that power of unity. It doesn't have to be so global in kind of a life framework or view, but this moment, hey, the reality is we're in this.
Right.
Well, and if you look at it from the perspective of whether it's a preschooler or a middle schooler, they're going to see it as, well, it's me against you, right? But the minute you reframe it into, we're in this together. Like, we can do this.
Right now. Right here.
We call it
Yes.
shared power. You
Yeah.
got it. We're in this together. We're going to, and that's very attachment languagey
Yes.
too. We're going to figure this out together.
Yes.
Yeah. The fourth one is power of attention.
Yeah. So what you focus on, you get more of. So our brains have a negativity bias. We are constantly focused on what we don't want, especially when we're upset. So the power of attention actually empowers us, especially in those moments of frustration, to first be aware and then shift your attention to, what do I want in this moment? And that automatically is going to help us upshift to a higher center of our brain. And then we can focus our attention on what we want and access skills of assertiveness and setting boundaries and, saying what we mean. Assertive commands.
Having a voice.
Having a voice.
Yeah, well, and even in your example about if you focus on the emotion and highlighting that back to your kiddo, you're going to get more of that thing.
Right.
And if you can help them name that, you're going to get more of that thing. That makes so much sense to me. The fifth one is power of acceptance.
That's
Say
a
more.
tricky one. So power of acceptance basically says that what you resist persists. I know Becky Bailey didn't come up with that, but it's the idea is that things happen that are hard. And when we
Yes.
can accept the moment, it gives us this opportunity to feel all the feels so that we can we use the analogy of a bridge so that we can welcome the feelings instead of push them away or medicate them or, avoid and resist. And then when we really can let the feelings bubble up and metabolize, then we can get to the other side, which is, so what do I want to do with this? What do I want to do? How am I going to problem solve? Am I going to use my assertive voice? And it helps us have the skill of empathy for ourselves, for others, so managing what's bubbling up.
Rather than to stifle it,
Correct.
which is how lots of our responses show up. We want to get rid of
Yes.
whatever the distress or even conflict is. And Tara and I have talked about that when we've done shows about conflict. And this is hard. We did a show several weeks ago about DBT, actually, and we talk about the concept of radical acceptance,
Yes.
which really is this power of acceptance.
Absolutely.
It's radically living into that this moment is, and it won't be different because it is what is occurring right now.
Well, and I think, too, the power of acceptance, I think one thing to point out that's interesting is, for adults, sometimes it's verbal. With kids, sometimes it's nonverbal in that
Good point.
you can, right away I started creating visuals. Like when you said power of acceptance, I was thinking of young kiddos that I've worked with, and it's almost like a surrendering with them where they just melt in that moment of acceptance where you see them not try and resist and just accept how they're feeling as it is, right?
Yeah.
And because they sometimes just are too young, they just can't verbalize it, but you see it somatically, like the moment that they do.
Yeah.
So the sixth power is the power of love, and not a Celine Dion song.
No.
But say more about the power of love.
So the power of love is basically the idea of choosing to see each other with loving eyes. So we especially talk about this a lot when someone is doing something hurtful. And instead of seeing it as that person is just a pain in the brain or a rat or whatever, that we're choosing to see, they were hoping that I was going to do this, and this is what they did. And then we get to, again, choose. But it helps us, again, stay in that thinking part of our brain. And so we teach a lot, like with parents, actually tonight I'm doing a training for parents about positive intent, about how to, in the moment when there's conflict, how can we acknowledge what is that child really wanting? So, you were wanting more time to play. And then when it's time to be all done, next, and then giving them the skills in the moment. But so positive intent really does just help us see that behavior as communicating missing skills, both in ourselves and in our kids.
Makes total sense. And the last one is power of intention.
Yeah, and it's the last one because it requires all the other 6 powers for intention to be helpful. Well, for the skill of intention to be helpful, and the skill is consequences. So often we want to know what's the consequence to make kids behave the way I want them to behave.
Yeah, compliance.
Yes, compliance. And the power of intention tells us that mistakes are actually an opportunity to teach missing skills.
They
and
are.
how many of us were punished for making mistakes? So,
Yes.
if we lean into the power of intention, if my intention is to punish you, then I'm coming from the lower center of my brain. If my intention is to save you, rescue you, happy you up, then that's coming from another lower center of my brain. But if my intention is to teach you, to help you, to problem solve with you, then I can create opportunities for consequences to be helpful and for them to be motivating for you to learn new skills. But if I'm in a lower center of my brain, I'm just going to punish you, or I'm going to abandon or rescue you.
Right. It's an opportunity to get closer to what you want.
Exactly. But it requires that we shift our perception, that we focus on what we want, that we take back our power, that we accept the moment as it is, that, like all of those
the things.
skills come together.
Yep.
And that's what's so hard about this model is it's a lot.
It doesn't just happen.
And takes a lot of practice.
A lot of
Yes.
practice. Yeah. And when you're stressed, your window of tolerance is so much smaller that it's hard. It's hard to catch yourself. It's hard to lean into those moments.
Especially when an aspect of what puts us into those lower spaces of our brain is this perception of judgment from other people. We want, as parents, we want to have the child who listens and behaves and looks compliant, who does as they're told, and it moves us into our own shame spaces if we see or it's demonstrated that it's not those things. It does something for ourselves on what I've deemed as successful parenting or what I wonder about other people thinking about me right now. And so, and that's real.
It's totally real. Yes.
You can't say that isn't true.
I would just say that's life of a parent, the fear of being judged constantly.
Yeah, and the fact that we are being judged,
Yes.
that is a real circumstance. So to live with that and to know that, and to practice something else when we are actively distressed, this takes a long time.
Yeah, it is. And in those moments when you do it, it's so empowering, right? The moment you say okay, I'm going to take a breath. You're wanting me to know you're angry. I got you. I hear you. And then you kind of see a shift in the relationship. And then, I of course have had many, many, many bumps along the way. I'm by no means a perfect parent, but to see my children are now, almost 20 and 17, and to see the emotional intelligence that they have that I'm still working on, to be quite honest with you. And that is you can just feel a difference. And I'm so
Incredible.
grateful because of this. Yeah.
There are a couple of key tenets about conscious discipline that I want to go over and I want to ask you about. The first one is regulation starts with adults versus the traditional approach that focuses on a child's behavior. The second one is behavior is communication. You mentioned this, not a problem. That's a paradigm.
That's a reframe from...
The third one is co-regulation builds independence. And the fourth one is we are one coherent system, not competing initiatives. And what would you say about any or all of those?
I think so. Because I also work in early childhood, this just it blends with everything we try to do as best practices in early childhood, which is this idea of we want to create the we first, like that co-regulation, safety, and relationship, and build up your skills so that you can go out and explore the world. And when I think about conscious discipline, it's kind of the same idea that we want to create the culture within our programs that is on this shared power, that we are in this together. We're going to build on each other's strengths. And when there are problems, that we're going to create enough safety and connection that when problems occur, that we can come together and have repair moments so that we just become stronger along the way. And so the other thing that you had mentioned earlier that I wanted to point out that goes along with this is one of the biggest shifts is really shifting from this idea of compliance. So many of us were trained in school. We're trained certainly as models
still
for us
in work.
as parents, maybe in work. Yeah,
Us adults, do what you're told.
Yes, do what you're told, and if you don't, that's bad. And so shifting that mindset around the end goal with children isn't to get you to comply, it's to help you be more likely to choose. What might help you be more likely to choose to finish your homework so that you might be more internally motivated to, because that's the goal, right? Is to build that internal motivation system. And so it, again, requires me to be able to be in the thinking parts of my brain so that I can offer co-regulation so that I can attune to what you need and I can see the behavior as missing skills.
Well, I can see what you're saying, Annie, in that if we are from spaces, lower parts of our brain, what we're also doing is fostering, modeling being in lower parts of our brain, which would nurture things like a helper complex or people-pleasing complex, as you mentioned, because if we're saying comply and someone says, well, I'll do that then, you mentioned good girl, I'll be a good girl. What we're not doing is encouraging someone to operate from their executive space in their brain, and they are only building that I'm good when I comply. I'm good if I'm people pleasing.
And then what happens if someone doesn't like me? Or what if I get constructive feedback? Whoa, how do I take that in? Because mistakes aren't okay, right? You have to be good, and everyone has to be happy. And then you lose yourself. So that gets back to that interdependence thing. You need how do you build that sense of self so that I can lean into those moments when I make mistakes and learn from that and say, oops, I'm going to do this a different way next time. And that's when we talk about consequences, that's really what a consequence is, being able to reflect, I did this thing and that wasn't helpful. Next time I'm going to do it different. Well, that requires me, first of all, to have the reflective capacity to do that and to be motivated and to care. If I'm just worried about, do you like me? Are you happy with me? Then maybe I'll do it because I want you. But some of our kids come to us armored up. They don't care. They don't care if you like them or not.
Right.
And then that's when we get into power struggles.
Right. That makes so much sense to me. There are some key strategies, and you mentioned one earlier in the show, but conscious discipline has many. Yeah. And so we won't get to all of them. And of course, you have a certification in this. Like, this takes a long time to learn about, and nobody's going to be an expert in conscious discipline from listening to this show even today, but it might spur them to say, I want to learn more about this. I want to read some of the resources or things like that. But I would love for you to tell us a little bit about some of the strategies. I love you rituals, the safe place, feeling buddies, and baby doll circle time. Any or all of those, and we're going to ask you some questions about them.
Okay. So I think I'll just start with I Love You Rituals.
Yeah,
That's
the I Love You
fine.
Rituals,
So,
which also I just love the name of it.
Yeah. And that was that first book I read that kind of interested me. So basically the idea of I Love Your Rituals are intentional face-to-face connections that you can do with your children. And they're really, like, I share that a lot with the parents I work with. It's helpful ways to just rebuild this. So many of our kids just, because of the way the world is and how busy we are, it's really hard to truly carve out that face-to-face time. And so I Love Your Rituals, basically what Dr. Bailey did is she took nursery rhymes we all grew up with, and she changed them to be more connecting. So instead of the old woman that lived in a shoe, had too many kids, didn't know what to do, she whipped them, blah, 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 she switched it to a wonderful woman lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she knew just what to do. She hugged them and kissed them and rocked them in bed. I love you is what she said. And then there's little finger gestures that you can do with it. So, wow. And she has a whole book of different examples. It's actually based on attachment. If you've ever heard of Theraplay, it's kind of a similar lens to that, where it's having that face-to-face connection. And so those are just helpful, structured ways to practice some of the ways to connect, especially in harder transitions, like bedtime can be really hard. And so I often encourage parents to have maybe 2 I Love You rituals as part of their connection. Sometimes you might see in the waiting room. Sometimes I do I Love You rituals at the end of our therapy sessions, where I'll maybe have a parent and a child do an I Love You ritual as a way of transitioning out, because that can sometimes be stressful.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Such a good idea.
And what a different paradigm in being intentional about having check-in times around love.
Yeah.
Yes.
That actually isn't one of the constructs of the society we live in. So what would change even with that?
Right. And the other ones, just to kind of touch on, is the safe place is really meant to be a structure to practice the skill of self-regulation. We talk a lot about that we as adults are portable safe places before we create safe places, but this is the shift from time out, it's time in. It's teaching children that when you become upset, there's a place you can go to calm your body down, and you can welcome your feelings. And the Feeling Buddies curriculum is actually curriculum to structure the safe place. And the idea is that we have all these, similar to Inside Out, you have all these different feelings, and we might have been taught, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. Don't be upset, just be happy. And so instead we're doing the opposite, which is welcome. Angry has a message for you. Angry's message is breathe. So you can see things differently. Or maybe Angry's message is you didn't like that. Somebody crossed a boundary and that wasn't okay. That's helpful to listen to that, right? And so the Feeling Buddies curriculum teaches us how to like retrain for some of us, or train. The nice thing is with kids, it's so easy to teach this as their first language or their first way of being.
Yes.
And so that's the, and Baby Doll Circle Time is another curriculum that's meant to offer that face-to-face connection in group care. So many of our kids have, don't get, because they go to group care, you just can't. As if you have 2 adults and 10 kids, it's hard to give them the face-to-face connection. And so it's reliving those I love you rituals with the baby dolls, and it's the same idea where they get that face-to-face. It's really a lovely curriculum. I've used it a lot in my day treatments with children that have experienced trauma to get a new experience of that face-to-face, and kids love it, and it's so cool to see we look for hurts on our babies, and some of our kids will be like, my baby has lots of hurts, and I'm like, we need, or my baby needs to breathe. You know what your baby needs, which is really lovely.
So they actually are holding a baby doll.
Yeah.
That's why it's called Baby Doll Circle Time. You can imagine then, listeners, kids in a circle holding dolls, and then utilizing
little
the doll.
caregivers.
And we sing to them, we might be like, get your baby, and then we might find baby's nose or their toe, like you might do with a real baby, but you're doing it with a baby doll. And the idea is that we're attuning to the baby, and we're having those face-to-face experiences. So, and you're facilitating it as the teacher.
That's incredible. Now, you mentioned a couple of resources that caregivers could seek out if they wanted to learn more.
Yeah. So definitely we have a new website. It's www.consciousdiscipline.com. And if you go on there, there's a lot of free resources. If you go to there's a parent tab. The other thing is they are just starting, I think they do the monthly free webinars, and sometimes it's Dr. Bailey, it's different certified instructors. You might see me some month, where we're just talking about different topics. And so Dr. Bailey is really trying to make it available to the public. So and then there are books available too. She has lots of resources. Dr. Bailey's written probably 10 different books. But the ones that are specifically for parents are the I Love You rituals. And then there's one called Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline.
Which I love that title. When I saw the title of that book, I was thinking, if we could just start that way.
I know.
That it wasn't conditional on whether or not you were easy to discipline. And this idea of love is given freely.
Yeah.
Not because you've complied.
Right.
Or because you've done what I told you to do.
It's not conditional. It's no matter what.
So even a beautiful title. And would you say that anybody can read these, or anybody can look into the resources?
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about if there are adults who are listening right now who don't have children, I've heard in the last many minutes that we can all do this.
Absolutely.
Because the sense of call to self-awareness and how we are showing up is maybe our own reckoning with what was modeled for us. How are we enacting that in the relationships with our coworkers, with our significant others? That recognizing some of this, we might be able to see, what was modeled for me when I was a kid, or what am I doing right now? That it seems like it's highly adaptable.
Totally. And I mean, I think of it just the most with my husband. I've been married 21 years, and I always say, I am positive I would not still be married if it were not for the skills of conscious discipline. And
incredible.
I have a willing husband. He's willing to also, because we both have patterns that aren't helpful, especially when it comes to conflict.
Does.
Yeah. So that's, answer to the world's problems.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you, how have you seen it make a difference?
Well, certainly in my marriage, I think just capacity. Also, as in professionally, being able for me to become, I feel like it helps me do everything just a little bit better, because it helps me regulate myself more. And the biggest thing is catching myself when I'm in the weeds. I mean, I still a lot catch myself.
Because you're human.
Because I'm human. And I know I'm a better friend. I'm certainly a better mother because of this information. And it also gives me an opportunity to make a living out of something I care deeply about, which is great.
Well, and I would guess that in seeing it make a difference, you've probably seen many kiddos interact with their caregivers in profoundly different ways.
And adults.
Yes. I mean, I am just thinking about what you must be able to get to witness in the coolest ways that is promoting life change for people that will have this ripple effect forever. So much to think about here. We are headed to a commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk through questions from you all. Feels Out Loud will process your thoughts in just a moment.
All you got to do now. Nothing to lose. In a world full of strangers, you don't know who to trust.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you, our listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. Of course, follow us on social media as well. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
And I love everyone that you are interested in conscious discipline.
Yes.
Because I think we're planting a seed even with the show today in people knowing about the topic and wondering about it. And Annie, we had people who had several different thoughts about this, but one of the questions I thought was interesting was, I work in an organization that I think could benefit from learning more about this. How can I access help?
So on the website, we have a form right on there that they can fill out, and then they would connect with somebody from our partner development team, and they'll talk a lot about the different ways that we can, based on whatever their needs are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go to Conscious Discipline's website.
Yeah.
Look it up, and if you have, if you work in an organization that you think might be helpful to have someone like you actually comes and can provide some resources, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Our second question was, are there tools you teach to help caregivers stay in a spot of regulation?
Yeah. The first thing I like to teach is just talk about the brain state model. So the brain state model is based on what we know about the brain, and it's a metaphor, and it's a very easy, understandable. So thinking about that certain behaviors are coming from different parts of the brain and what each behavior is communicating. So just real quick, so survival state is that, lower center of the brain, almost like that fight or flight part of the brain.
Sure.
Behaviors tend to be physical. They tend to be, physical or shut down. And what the behavior is communicating is, keep me safe. Keep me safe. So
it's highly protective.
Right. And so what that might mean is, regulate me, co-regulate me, help me make sense of what I'm feeling, right? Or set a boundary. Help me, like we don't let toddlers run into the street. We set a boundary to keep them safe. And then we have the emotional state. And the emotional state is always focused on what it doesn't want. It's judgmental. It's saying things like, you're not invited to my birthday party. I hate you. You're stupid. You need to take parenting class.
I was just going to say, there goes the daughter.
That, yes.
And what that's saying is, connect with me, which also means understand me, offer me understanding. And the executive state is saying, help me problem solve. So we think about, is the child or person asking for information, or are they looking for understanding, or are they just looking for safety? So even with adults I work with, if their defense system is on, I'm not going to start telling them, well, here's what you should do. Like that, nobody wants to hear that,
Such
right?
a good point.
Yeah, you just want to know, in my presence, you're safe. And then maybe if you feel safe enough with me, that when you're upset, maybe I can offer validation, and you can hear it as, I'm holding space for you, so that we can think together, how might we problem solve? So that's even the idea of helping parents understand the brain science behind it kind of unhooks the story we tell ourselves about, well, they should be doing this, or well, here's what we know about the brain, and this is how we know that shows up in behavior.
And also really helps get at this idea of, if we're going to move to talking about what to do about something, we have to make sure those other things are
Online.
At least noticed, ideally addressed or observed, because we've mentioned on this show, somebody's not going to be able to engage in problem solving with you if they are in that safety seeking spot.
Right.
And you have probably thousands of examples of this, even as a teacher, too, of if you're in these places with a person who is seeking safety, this isn't the time to talk about sequencing.
Yes.
No.
Or to lecture. Well, what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
You know, like that's not helpful either.
But how many times do we do that with little kids who are crying?
Yes.
And you're trying to go,
Yeah.
now why would you do that?
Uh-huh.
Now you need to apologize. Whatever. It's
Yes.
like, oh, we all need to wait. Let's observe where this kiddo's at right now.
And download our Calm.
Yes.
And so that's the tools, downloading Calm.
I love it. Well, we're already at the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening this morning, and thank you for being on, Annie. Join us next week as we process more mental health-focused topics, and in the week ahead, be kind to yourself, everyone. Remember that connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one that the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.